Bleach has had a really interesting ride over the last couple years. It went from being the bad one of the big three of Naruto, One Piece, and itself, to people like really, I would say, reevaluating it and seeing a lot of its strengths. I am a Bleach defender. I've been on this podcast before to talk about Bleach Defense, the Bleach Defense Squad. I will admit it has problems. It's not a perfect series by any means. What bothers me is when people talk about things that are not, I don't think, like they make the wrong critiques of it. It's got plenty of issues, but people complain about things that I really don't think are worth complaining about or are silly. There's a lot of like outdated arguments about the series that just aren't that important. I would say that the best way to experience Bleach might be the way in which I did it, which was watch the anime, skip the filler arcs, because there are entire seasons of filler, and then once you start getting bored of the pacing, once the pacing gets a little bad, or where you're kind of feeling it drop off, switch over to reading the manga. I was watching Bleach, I dropped it, because I got bored halfway through the Hueco Mundo arc, and then I decided to go back and finish it, but I read the manga, and I started like right on the chapter where Ishida and Pesce are fighting the moth Arrancar girl. That's specifically the chapter. I remember that very vividly. Because Kubo kind of gets into this bad habit in the Hueco Mundo Arrancar arc of just shoving in like tons of really, really like padding fights, a lot of fights that feel like padding, that just aren't interesting, that aren't really advancing the main. It just feels like, I need to have a fight. I need to have a fight every so often. I didn't come up with enough plot to happen, so we need to shove a fight in here. And then I read the rest of the manga, and honestly, it was a breeze for all of the problems that the series does have, and it's got some. And then I finished it with the Blood War. So if you don't know, if you've been hearing, Bleach is getting a new anime or something, it's been having a new anime for a few years. Basically, the story goes, the manga was adapted into an anime for 15 seasons, something like that, 16 seasons. A lot of that was filler. There is a really long, drawn-out arc, the whole Arrancar Eisen War arc, where the pacing in the manga already gets kind of bad, and then you match that with weekly shonen anime pacing, where the shots get really long, and there's 5-minute recap sections at the start of every episode. And there's all of these, there's more exposition, and there's flashbacks every time something is mentioned. And the ratings kind of declined. The ratings got a little shaky for a bit. I think a lot of people stuck it out to see the end of that arc. Then there's a filler arc. There's filler arcs in the middle of that one, where it's just like, okay, well, we gotta fill for time so the manga can get more material. And then it comes back to the manga, and the final season of Bleach is probably the least liked arc from the manga. The Lost Agent arc. People hated that one at the time. I actually quite like the Lost Agent arc, which is the Fullbringer one, if anyone doesn't know. I liked it. One of my main problems with the anime is that it just got kind of nauseatingly high power, if that makes sense. Near the end of the Eisen War, it just feels like a lot of the fights are just my power is so big. I'm so big and strong. I shoot a big nuclear missile at you, and it's but I dodged that with my super triple light speed teleport, and I throw an even bigger nuke at you because I'm actually so stronger than you. And it just gets kind of boring, and you just get a headache from it. And then at the end of that arc, Ichigo loses his powers. and you get the Lost Agent arc, and everything just kind of resets. And it's kind of nice. It's an intentional throwback to the start of the series when things were really simple. We're just hanging out in the town. Supernatural things are happening. Ichigo struggles with kind of one of his main character motivations, which is his desire to protect people and not being able to do that without his powers. And it's nice. It's a nice arc. You get introduced to these interesting, these weird characters, the Fullbringers. Their abilities are really interesting and cool. I dare say it gets a little JoJo-esque. Where they have these really unique... I love the bartender guy who his ability is to make a contract with God where it's always some kind of time-related thing. He sets some kind of timer, and either he will get a power-up for the timer, or something has to be accomplished within a timer, or it will, like, incinerate. It'll be destroyed. He has, like, a contract-based ability. It's really neat. It has one of the coolest main villain powers I've ever seen, which is the villain Tsukishima. His ability it's called Book of the End. And it's a sword that is like a bookmark. And it doesn't cut things. If he stabs you with it, he implants himself into your memories and basically brainwashes you into believing that you have been friends with him this whole time. Into essentially, it's a friendship stab. So all he has to do is hit a character one time, and then suddenly they think that he's the good guy, and Ichigo, why do you hate that guy? It's one of the coolest premises for a one-shot, like a one-hit win ability I've ever seen. It's super cool. But people hated it because it wasn't like basically they hated it because it wasn't just like shonen junk. I'm getting a little pretentious here. It wasn't shonen power scaling slap where, the guys have the bigger number than the other guy. And it was slower, and Ichigo cries during it, and like it's got a lot of potential, but because it had such poor feedback, Kubo's editor made him cut it short, and you really feel it. There's a character, like, that should be a big moment for Chad. That should be a Chad, maybe not focused arc, but he should be an important part of it. Like, the nature of Chad's powers. He's actually a Fullbringer. Whoa, this is one of Ichigo's friends. We're learning new things about his power and his place and how he relates to things. And Chad's always had this kind of thing where he's like, he's like Ichigo, he's a bit of an outcast. Like, he's mixed with something that isn't like even, I would say, cool or sort of fetishized or exoticized in Japan. He's a Japanese Mexican. So he's like really tall, and he doesn't look like a lot of the other Japanese kids. And like Ichigo, he's kind of an outsider because of the way he looks in this more homogenized society. And he's got his own, he's kind of a kindred spirit with how he feels about his strength with Ichigo. Like, he wants to protect people, he wants to do right by the people he loves. And this feels like, oh, okay, well, now he has this group of people who are kind of like him. They have the same source of their powers. He's learning about things. And then Kubo just never really, like, fleshes it out enough. There needed to be more Chad stuff. I was talking about, this was meant to be about the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. All this to say, having an arc that drags on way too long, that is then followed by like a season and a half of filler, that is then followed by a quote-unquote boring arc, basically was the death knell for the Bleach anime originally. It was not canceled. I would say it was more mercy killed in the end by the studio. They just didn't renew it. And for the longest time, the final arc of Bleach, the 1,000-Year Blood War, went unanimated. And that's a shame, because the Blood War is awesome, in my opinion. Some people don't like it. But I think that the Blood War is it's got some of Kubo's best stuff in it. And it's for two reasons. There's two things that really that are really going on during the Blood War. One is that Kubo is paying off two different types of things. One is the setups for all of the things. It's payoffs for setups that have been introduced previously in the series. And a lot of those setups are really great. They're interesting. They add a lot of depth and intrigue to the world. A lot of characters. Well, okay, so this is the other thing. The other thing he's paying off is his writer's debt. You know the term technical debt? Where a programmer does something the quick and dirty way, and then later on when they have to, they keep doing that. Every time you do something the quick and dirty way, you end up you incur a little bit of technical debt. And so the next time you have to go code something related to that system or whatever you set up before, suddenly you have to deal with spaghetti code that worked for the time at this thing at the time for this thing, but really doesn't scale well, or it's really messy or convoluted, and it just becomes a big headache. And it's like, fuck, okay, maybe we need to put in the work to actually do this the right way. Kubo has what I call writer's debt, which is he has some bad habits in the sense that he will do things in his stories that advance the plot for the time being, but make more work for him later. He, quite infamously, so Bleach has 1 million characters. I'm watching the Blood War arc, and I'm like, God damn, we are 2 seasons in and still cutting to new characters. Well, not new, but like previous characters that haven't shown up yet. Like everyone in the fucking world comes back and gets a little thing in the Blood War. And he's gone on record and said that one of his bad habits is that when he doesn't know how to advance the story, he just throws in a new character. Someone new shows up, or like 10 new guys show up, and they are there to provide some kind of conflict or push the story forward in some way. He does this constantly throughout the series. And when you have this huge cast of characters, not only does it kind of take away from it being Ichigo's story a little bit, it also creates a lot of work for you down the line where you're like, fuck, there's so many guys who have like nothing going on. They need like a little something. There are members of the Gote 13, the first like big group you're introduced to early on, who just don't get like that much of anything until the Blood War. He spends a lot of time making sure that lots and lots of characters get a little thing to do. They get something cool, a little moment, a segment. Komamura, the dog guy. Oh wow, he's one of the more visually interesting members of the Gote. He hasn't really done that much. He gets a really cool moment. He gets a good pop in the Blood War. Hitsugaya, very popular character, but barely does anything and actually loses, I think, every single fight he was ever involved in. He gets a cool pop in the Blood War. Fucking Ganju. He gets a little thing. A lot of characters get a little thing. And it's great. And then in the course of the manga, Kubo is so focused on paying off all of this debt he's accrued over the years that he kind of again loses sight of what should be important in the story. So that's why one of the reasons I was so interested in the Blood War anime. I watched the first episode or the first few episodes when it came out, and then I kind of just thought, it's the Blood War. It's cool. I'm glad it's getting animated. And then I kind of found out, I discovered that there are actually changes. And Kubo was looking at the Blood War as almost a director's cut, a second crack at the storyline. And that got me really interested. So I kind of, and also I found out that a local theater was playing the first 3 episodes of the final core, the final season. They basically taken a couple hundred chapter arc, and they've been doling it out in a series of 13 episode seasons. There's 4 of them, so like 52. Yeah, it's about 52 episodes total. And the first 3 episodes of the final core were playing in theaters, and I thought, you know what? When am I ever going to get to do this again? So I got my tickets. I got misgendered at the ice cream store. But before that, I kind of speed ran. I kind of crunched the anime down, and I had a good time. I had a good time watching the Blood War anime. I'll be completely upfront. I quite like it, and I think that a lot of the changes that they made were really good. There are changes that, because I read the Blood War back in like 2017, like back in high school, and there are scenes in the anime that I look back on, I think of now, and I think, wait, hang on, because I looked at what are the actual changes that they made, and I was like, that wasn't in the manga? So, okay, a couple things. For the most part, the early parts... Okay, so the early seasons of the Blood War, like the first 1 or 2, are pretty close to the manga. There's a couple new things, a little details that are great. Like, for instance, when the fight between Yamamoto and Yuha, the big bad of the final big bad of the series, Yuha Baha. It's established like, okay, way back in the past, the Soul Reapers murdered all of the Quincy's because the Quincy's were threatening to disrupt the balance of souls between worlds. And this is a grudge. This is the 1,000-year Blood War. This is the grudge that Yuha is taking revenge for. And the first casualty of the war is Yamamoto's lieutenant, Chojiro. Chojiro has always just kind of been a background character. I can't even remember if he had any lines at all. He was just Yamamoto's vice captain, and he was there. He has like a lightning power or something. I don't know. He's the first casualty, and this royally pisses Yamamoto off. He is so angry. And it leads to him overextending in his fight against Yuha, which ultimately leads to getting popped. But they add in a little detail to be like, hey, so when Yamamoto first killed Yuha, way back when, Yuha's back, he's revived, basically. But when he first killed him, Chojiro was playing dead behind Yuha, and he popped up and stabbed him in the back, which stunned him for just long enough for Yamamoto to deal the finishing blow. Little details, just a little detail, like, oh, it was so when Chojiro was the first death, that was like extra personal, not like between them. That's Yuha going out of his way to be like, my revenge. Like, I'm gonna start with the guy who set me up, basically. Little details like that, really nice. That's a cool little thing. And there's like extended sequences of the original Gotei 13, which is super cool. Kubo has this talent. Say what you will about his writing. He has a real talent for dropping a 2-page spread of character designs that make you go, I need to learn everything about these guys. That's what originally drew me to Bleach in the first place, was Kubo's artwork, and his character designs are just so sick. He has, like, in my opinion, of the big three, my favorite art style of any of them. I think his characters are so cool looking. The world is so compelling. He really understands the strength of a good vibe. Bleach has just, I think more than any other series, shonen series that I've watched, Bleach might have the most immaculate vibes. Just go watch some of the openings, or especially the endings. There's some great endings that show the characters just hanging out, or weird, cool, like visual art design and patterns and stuff like that. Every chapter has a unique title card, and which was then adapted into the anime. Every anime episode has a unique title card. It's a really stylish series. And out of nowhere, he, like, on Twitter a few years ago, he just dropped, here's what the original Gote 13, here's what all the captains looked like. And you're like, I need to see, I need to see all these guys. I need to know what their Bankai is. I need to know what their Bankais all are. The further you get into it, there is some crucial stuff that, again, I thought, oh my god, how is this not in the manga originally? Namely, a lot of stuff with Uryu. So you'd think that the big arc about the Quincy's fighting the Soul Reapers would have more to do with Ichigo's Quincy friend Uryu, one of the first characters we're introduced to, and a guy who's been along with us on like every big journey adventure that we've had. Wouldn't he be important to the plot? Yeah, he is. He's there. Doesn't really get to do much. And this is kind of what I mean where Kubo kind of loses track of stuff. He makes so much work for himself with so many characters and plot threads that he has to make good on. Because this is the last arc. There's no more kicking the can down the road. Stuff has to get done. That he ends up losing sight of stuff that should be really important. Ichigo's got a great arc in the Blood War. Uryu gets really left to the wayside, and a character who should be super important just doesn't get to do anything. Until the end, and so when it happens, it feels kind of like an ass pull. It's not built up to it. It's not very satisfying, and it feels like a big missed opportunity. Uryu gets way more characterization. He gets like 3 extra fights. Some of his fights are completely redone to introduce new elements that flesh out like his powers, like the new techniques that he's learning. He gets like an actual Quincy Volstandig. Bleach is all about the transformations. I don't think in the manga Uryu even got a special Quincy transformation. A big missed opportunity. He has one. And like all this, like he gets to show off during the Squad Zero fight, and he feels like it's little scenes, a couple extra fights that he gets that just show you what he's doing and what's going through his mind. There's like, okay, Uryu makes some decisions in the Blood War that feel crazy. And on paper, when everything is explained, it kind of makes sense, but you really don't feel like in the moment you understand what's going on. And there is a lot of extra context of like, he found out this information in between this and this happening, and that changed his mind on things. Great. Okay, that's all I needed. That makes it feel way more motivated that any of this is happening. Cool. Like, Uryu is so much better. He's so much better in the anime. On top of just like, man, the animation's great. The pacing is really good. I was never bored. Watching the Blood War anime. Because it's just constant momentum. It's new things happening. It's characters getting their time to shine. And lots of surprises, I'll say. So I went to go see the first 3 episodes, and I really liked them. I had a good time. So this is okay. One of the other things that's crazy about or that really piqued my interest about this, and one of the other reasons I actually decided to go marathon the series to get caught up, is that I found out that at the point that Cour 4 is starting, it's a 13-episode season, and there's like 12 chapters left. Now, the ending of the Blood War is easily the most contested part of it. It is the most disliked part of the arc, and I totally see why. I think some people hate it probably more than I do. I think when you dig into it and you try to understand what Kubo was doing, basically, okay, a lot of people say that it's like a huge Deus Ex Machina ass pull, and that the final fight with Yuha sort of falls apart logically. And they're kind of right. I won't contest them on that. I think that when you look at it thematically, what Kubo was trying to do, it makes a lot of sense why things go down the way that they do, why Ichigo gets to do something at the very end, yada yada. But it does feel kind of rushed and not quite built up to. And it feels like he's just kind of trying to get it done. And I don't want to shame Kubo too much for that. He was experiencing some serious health problems near the end of the story that had to do with... He didn't know this. He didn't actually get a diagnosis until after the manga was done. He was just so busy. But apparently he was going through extreme pain in his arm. He went to the doctor and he found out that he had this habit of leaning on his left arm whenever he drew. And over time, that put a lot of stress on it. And he was going through a lot of pain. And his doctor told him that if he had been doing that, if he'd kept that up for like another year, he risked having serious damage done to, like permanent damage done to the ligaments in his left arm. So you can kind of tell, like, Kubo just gives up on drawing backgrounds. He just gives up on it. He kind of tried to say, like, oh, I wanted to focus on the characters' emotions and, their faces and stuff. And it's true. All of the stuff that he does draw is great. I love Kubo's later art style. I think it looks fantastic. And his character expressions are really detailed, and they're detailed, but they retain that stylization. Everything that he draws looks great, but he's leaving a lot of stuff undrawn, if you know what I'm saying. A lot of blank backgrounds. And he was never that big into backgrounds in the first place. He likes drawing cool people doing cool things. So I get it. I get why it went down like that. I don't feel quite as sore about it as some other people do, but the prospect of him going back and revising it is super interesting, because at the point that the last episode of Core 3 leaves off, Ichigo is on the steps. He's at the steps of the final battle of the whole series. And it's like, okay, there is literally no way that you squeeze 13 episodes out of this fight. It's just not that long. And there's not enough to do. There's still a couple other things on the side that need to happen, but those are not going to take up even 5 episodes, right? Because there's a lot of things going on at the same time, but they are, to my memory, they get resolved pretty quickly once that final fight starts happening. So, what are they going to do? Well, having seen the first 3 episodes, I don't know yet, and it makes me super curious. We're not at the point where the original stuff really starts kicking in yet, or it has to be original, right? I guess I'll talk spoilery about it, because I'm going to talk about 3 episodes adapting a couple chapters from a manga. It adapts the fight between mainly, so the beginning is mostly the fight with Askin, which I know a lot of people don't like. I think it's a really cool fight. I've never really understood. I've never agreed with the ass pull or Deus Ex Machina accusations that a lot of Bleach fights get. I personally think that those are a lot of fun. This could just be a matter of taste. A lot of Bleach fights are I've come up with a secret technique. Oh, but I've come up with a even secreter technique. And you're like, you might be asking, hey, Taigen, how is that different from just throwing bigger numbers at each other and throwing an even bigger number? And it's because it's kind of fun and clever, and it relies on a genuinely pretty well thought out power system. It's mostly like when that happens, it's usually characters being clever with their abilities or the way that the power system works. And I personally find that a lot more exciting and satisfying to see someone outsmart someone else or in some kind of novel, charming way. Like, the whole deal with Askin is that his ability is that he can alter the lethal dosage of something in your body. So if he consumes a little bit of your blood, he can make your blood poisonous to you by lowering the lethal dosage amount, which is a crazy, interesting, cool power. And it basically turns him into not an aggressive fighter. He's more of like an attrition. He doesn't like fighting. His strategy is more so just to preserve himself. Now he's trapped with, like, Urahara and Yoruichi. Okay, side thing. So, as soon as I realized what fight this was going to be covering, I took my phone out so that I could take some pictures. Don't worry, the flash was not on, and I was, like, there was, like, 4 people in the theater besides me. I went at, like, 1 in the afternoon. So, as soon as I was in my own row, doing my own thing, it was practically a private viewing. I had to get a picture of the title card for this episode. It might be the most infamous title card in the entire series, God of Thunder. So you know how I said that every single episode or chapter had a unique title card? So Yoruichi Shihoen, who I think might be the hottest woman in any anime ever, in the hottest woman ever drawn, is wearing a very tight, skimpy bodysuit for this fight. The chapter 366 or whatever, God of Thunder, the title card is just like, there's this panel where she's like jumping away, and you get a close-up where the title card and chapter number are just stamped onto her ass. And I was like, oh my god, I hope they do it. I hope they do it. When the title card... Dude, they build up to it. There is dramatic tension leading up to the ass shot. It's all black, and then the words come in, and they're like curved. And then the rest of the image, it lights up, and it's all on her ass. And I was like, yeah, I got a photo of it. Let's go. This is the fight where, like, the really infamous Yoruichi turns into a sexy electric kitty cat thing happens. It is possibly the most shameless that the manga ever gets. It is the most shameless that the manga ever gets. She is like she starts meowing, and she turns into like a feral animal. And she's in this almost nude, basically, instead of clothing, she's basically just she just has like lightning flashing all around her, all over her body, it's kind of acting like clothes. Kubo said he wanted to make her look like a goddess, which, oh, he did. And then so Askin can make someone's own spiritual energy, their own reishi, as it's called, become poisonous to them. However, because Yoruichi becomes so much like a cat, and cats are notoriously moody and temperamental, the texture of her spiritual pressure changes every couple of, like, 48 times in every second, because she's a moody cat. And he cannot get a handle on her. Which, again, it's like shit like this that Bleach pulls all the time, and I love it. The fight is really fun. It's also the first time you get a reveal of Kisuke's... Oh, I should mention that this season does not come out for, like, another month. So this is also like an early screening that I got to see of it. You get to see Urahara's Bankai, which the Bankai reveal is always one of the biggest, like, hypest things in Bleach. like, oh, what is it? What's it going to look like? It's like finding out a character's stand in JoJo, or just what's their signature super technique, because it's always something unique and interesting. His Bankai is really cool. It matches his personality, of course, and there's some extra stuff added to it that's really nice. Like just the intro scene of when it appears, it was designed to be like a horror movie, and it's like this because it's like this big marionette ball jointed doll is what it's based off of, and it lets him disassemble and reassemble anything, like including space, so he can like stitch space together and stuff like that. It's very cool. And there's this creepy spooky horror sequence as it first appears, and it's really interesting. It's really cool. The last 2 episodes go more into Uryu versus Hashvalth, which gets a bunch of new stuff. Hashvalth gets like a new form, which looks really cool. And then Ichigo starts the fight with Yuha, and genuinely, the 3rd episode ends at like the penultimate chapter. It ends at like the penultimate, or like 3 chapters from the end of the show, or of the manga. So obviously there's a ton of shit that's going to happen afterwards that diverges a lot, that I'm really interested in. Other changes, Orihime gets way more play. Another character who, kind of gets left to the wayside a little bit. Orihime, she gets a ton of stuff to do in the final fight. It is like she becomes super important to Ichigo surviving, and that's really nice. She gets a little time to shine and to be useful, I guess. A lot of shonen women have a problem with being not that useful. Honestly, Bleach doesn't fall into this too often. I think Kubo in general is pretty good at writing female characters and giving them stuff to do. It's more so just a case of a lot of characters in Bleach don't get to be useful because of how many fucking characters he has to juggle. And again, this is just a nice way to give her a little bit more plot stuff. Then there was a really intriguing final, or at the end, I guess, because it's like only an hour. It was only like an hour's worth of content. So they included an exclusive behind the scenes like interview thing with Kubo, the director, and I think like the lead artist, something like that, or the lead animator, something like that. And there's a lot of really cool details that I never knew about. So not only did Kubo advise on things to obviously change with the story and stuff like that in the script, he also submitted tons of visual stuff. He submitted like storyboards, which is very unusual for a mangaka to do, and he was actually concerned that it was he didn't want to step on the toes of the actual storyboarders, but they ended up apparently really appreciating it, and it made them feel a lot more confident that they were doing something that did his story justice, that they actually had a guide to follow. So that was cool. He submitted designs, like Hashvalth's new design was all him. He came up with a way for him to get, because for lore reasons, Hashvalth normally wouldn't be able to get a new transformation. So how would he do that? Okay, well, there's a cool new design that explains him getting a new form. There was a really funny segment where they talked about the notes that Kubo had for the animators, which included him there's a shot of Askin's face. It's just a reaction shot. And Kubo has written 4 notes for what emotions are running through his head at this point, and how they should capture every single one of those thoughts. And they're not like very simple either. It's like 5 different, I thought of this and I don't like that, and I'd rather not do this, but I'm thinking of that and I'm jealous of this. And he's like, you have to communicate all of these things in a character's expression. In this character's expression. and they showed the actual clip that shot appears in, and it's less than a second. He was just copious with his notes. Yeah, it was a good experience. It was fun to see it with people who clearly had not read the manga, who were actually surprised by certain things. Like, when Urahara says Bankai, there was a guy behind me that I heard say, "Oh?" Because that's probably super hype if you've been watching this show for a while. And Bleach skews a little older for some reason. I don't know why it is, but the Bleach audience, I've noticed, I don't know if tons of youngins are into the One Piece now, right? And I guess probably the same for Naruto, maybe a little older just because of, how long the series has been going on. But for some reason, I find that Bleach has like the oldest audience on average. It might be because the series, because it waned in popularity, it didn't actually gain that many new fans. So a lot of people who are fans of it have been watching it or reading it since like the mid 2000s. And those people are all like 30, 35 now. I was the youngest person in the theater. So that must have been pretty cool to have been watching a show for that long and then suddenly get a payoff for this kind of... I would say that Bankais are not like necessarily promised. Aizen's never shown off his Bankai yet. We don't know what's going to happen in the later episodes. But it's implied. It's always implied like they could show off their Bankai. And Urahara goes so long without doing so when he totally could have. Maybe there was an opportunity to, that when it does happen, it feels like, whoa, it's like a big payoff. So it was fun. It was a good experience. I'm really excited for the rest of the anime. And I, in some way, 16-year-old Taigen is being satisfied by this whole experience. There's there's things from my childhood that are finally getting resolved, and it's not through therapy. So that was a good time. I can't even say I would recommend watching if you watch the anime, you were a fan of the anime, I would say watch the Blood War. But if you literally have never watched Bleach, I'm not going to be like, yeah, just jump into the final arc where all this complicated shit is happening. That requires knowledge of tons of stuff that happened earlier. Like, it's not a jumping on point by any means. But yes, I enjoyed it.